role as a professor, I think for this, Professor Shanti Pawan is the one who is responsible, who nurtured me to become a professor, and for that I will always be indebted to him. So this is my story, and after that I will again move back to the main topic, that what it takes to be a good researcher. So consider like this: on the left side, person X is there who want to become a researcher, and for being a researcher I can say the first step may be doing a PhD. So consider this PhD is like this big black rectangular box. And why the major portion of this box I kept as black? Because in this story of doing PhD, lot of things are unknown, because every individual PhD has its own journey. So you don't know much what happens through that journey. It can only be told when somebody has gone through it. But clearly, two things can be said about it, and those two things are patience and hard work, or smart work. Not hard work, but smart work. So, if you have patience and if you work smartly, then whatever the rest of the things are, ultimately you will end up in getting this doctorate degree, and you may become a Dr. X. So, like these are the two very crucial and important pillars of being a good researcher. You never should lose patience, and you have to work very smartly. Other than that, there are few more criterias like honesty. Honesty is a very important criteria if you want to become a good researcher. Because I will just give you a simple example. Let's say you are performing some experiment in your laboratory, and for that experiment you have already made certain hypothesis. So now when you perform experiment, you let's say take 10 data sets, and out of those 10 data sets, let's say 9 data sets are as per your hypothesis. But there comes one data point which is not as per your hypothesis. Now what you should do? Should you report this 10th data point also? Because if you are going to report that, then your hypothesis is no longer valid. But here is the junction point which defines whether you are a good researcher or not. If you are a good researcher, even though you are not sure about the reasoning why this 10th data point is coming, but still you should always report this, because it may happen that in future somebody, when he will go through your results, he may explain that why that is happening. So that's how research progresses. So in order to become a good researcher, you have to be very honest about your work, and that is the fundamental and foremost criteria which I will say is very crucial. The second thing is, failures only lead to success. So you will get to know, like I think you might already be familiar with this, that when you start learning something, in the beginning you may experience that your methodology is wrong, then you improvise it, then once you improvise, you again do the same experiment, and then you find things may start working. So the same happens to research also. In research also, you have to keep on trying. You may get failures n number of time, but then you keep on improvising based on the learning from those failures, and then after a certain number of attempts, you finally get the success. So this is the second criteria, that you should never lose a hope even if you experience failures. And third thing is, perseverance is the key. So you have to have lot of patience, then only you can become a good researcher. So these are like very fundamental and very basic criteria, and I think you should always try to imbibe that in your personality. The next question comes is that if you want to become a researcher, which path you should take? Whether you should go for MTech, or you should go for MS, or you should go for PhD. So these are like three different higher education branches. So now the question is, why you want to go for this research, or let's say higher education? So let's say if your answer is that you want to get a better job, but much sooner, then in my opinion, you should always go for MTech. Because MTech is primarily a coursework based program, where actually you get to study more advanced courses compared to your BTech. So you go in more detail about your subject, but it is like limited duration. It is only 2 years program. And after 2 years, if obviously you do it from a good institute, you can fetch a better job. Some people also use MTech as a option to change their domains. So let's say if somebody after BTech joins a job, and let's say he worked for he or she worked for 2 or 3 years, but after that they realizes that this is not the place where their interest lies, and after that they want to switch to a different company. But what happens, because your experience is in some other domain, and now when you try to apply for some different profile job, you find difficulty in fetching that job. So at that time, doing a higher education can also be a viable option. You can go through this higher education, you can actually enhance your knowledge in the different domain, and then once you finish it, you again get opportunity to fetch the jobs in that particular area. Some people also use it for improving their knowledge even though they don't want to change their domain. And also if you are doing it from a better institute, you can fetch a better job in a better company. This also provides you an opportunity to do 1 year project in your final year. So this project is more research oriented. So this gives you a feeler about research. So you can say you kind of somewhat get feeling about the research, but yeah, this is not much into detail because most of the focus during MTech is learning advanced coursework. So it is just one step further than your BTech degree. In IIT Delhi, especially, we have some special MTech program also. For example, we host one program which is known as VDTT. It is short abbreviation for VLSI Design Tool and Testing Program. So the specialty of this program is that in this program, every candidate is actually sponsored by a particular industry. So these industry basically fund their scholarships. So stipend is slightly higher here. And as a part of this industry relation, you get to spend your 6 month duration in working in some particular industry, whichever is sponsoring you. So for example, all the major industry players like Qualcomm, NXP, ST Microelectronics, these companies generally sponsor this VDDT program. And this program is more like a collaborative program between different departments. So in IIT Delhi, the electrical department, computer science department, and there is one center for advanced research in electronics. These all three departments collaborate and then they offer this program. So if you want to know more about it, you can go through this link. I am just mentioning the website address here. Then the next question comes is, after describing MTech, the two other degrees are MS and PhD. So what should you decide between MS versus PhD? So MS, I will tell, MS is actually a master level program only, but it is a special master level program because unlike MTech, here the candidates work under a supervisor. Like in MTech, when you join, MTech is more like a BTech. There you join and you do n number of courses, and you are not assigned to any particular guy. Though in second year when you go, you have to do 1 year project. So that time you may be assigned to a particular supervisor, but not throughout your journey. While in MS, the right away after your joining, you will be assigned to a supervisor, and this supervisor will basically guide you that which particular coursework you should study. So those coursework will be more related to your research, and he or she will also assign you a particular topic. So which the topic of your research will be the area in which you are carrying out your master work. So because of this reason, sometimes the MS can also be termed as a mini PhD, because even though this is a master level program, but the framework of this program is more like a PhD. So that's why you get a feeling about PhD, but because it happens in a shorter duration and ultimately you get a master degree, so we can call it as a mini PhD. And today almost all IITs have an option where you can join as a MS, and after 1 year or even sometimes one semester, if you perform well, you can convert it into a PhD. So why this is very important? Because it gives you an option that, see, sometimes it happens that even though you want to do a PhD, but you are not very sure about the area of research, or also you may not be sure about the choice of supervisor. So in those scenario, it is better to join as a MS, and then you can become familiar with the supervisor or familiar with the area of research. And if everything goes smoothly, then after a semester or after a year, if you are fine with everything, you can convert it into a PhD. Or let's say if things are not going as per your desire, then you have an option to leave as a MS graduate only. Okay, so this is a very flexible option. So in my opinion, you should join as a MS candidate when you are not very sure about your area of research or supervisor. The next thing is regarding PhD, and even in PhD, there is an option which is known as direct PhD. So direct PhD you generally do right after your BTech. So here I just wrote that if you are ready to gamble your future and have no short-term hope from your life, then you can opt for a direct PhD. This is just a joke, but the crux of this point is, like, if you are very sure about that what you actually want to do, and let's say you are very sure about your area of research also. So let's say even during BTech you find that circuit designing is a thing which you are really have a passion for, then you can straight away opt for a direct PhD, because this will give you an opportunity to right away work in the research domain related to that subject. However, when you opt for this, you have to have actually much more patience than coming to PhD after MTech. Why I say this? Because here you are right away coming to PhD just after your BTech, so you are not at all familiar with research work, because even though in BTech you'd sometimes do a final year project, but the complexity of that project is not that exhaustive, and also your maturity level is not that high. So in the beginning you may find that you have to put much more effort in order to become familiar with the way of doing research, or in order to accept the failures, and you have to keep on trying. That's what I can say. But the benefit of this is it can save your years, because you are right away coming to PhD. So sometimes it happens, let's say if you are coming going first to MTech and or MS, and then you are coming to PhD. So then in your master and in your PhD, the projects can be different. So if projects are different, obviously you have to start again when you go for PhD, because it's a different project. But if you are coming for direct PhD, because it's only like you are straight away starting, so you need not to divide your attention into two different subject. So that's why it can save your total duration. The next question comes is, how should you choose your supervisor? So generally you can find that you always have a flexibility to either work with a junior supervisor. Junior means the one who has recently joined as a professor, and you can also join under a supervisor who is much more experienced. So there is certain trade-offs which I can say is, like, when you join with a junior supervisor, he or she can devote much more times with you, because they are relatively new, they are having more energy, they want to succeed. So that's why they will give you more time. The drawback can be that if let's say they are joining in an area which is relatively new, so their laboratory may not be that well equipped. So that is a drawback. So but it may happen that you also help them in developing the laboratory, so you can sometimes learn more also. The second thing is, if you are joining with a experienced supervisor, or in an experienced research group, obviously you can get a better facility there, the laboratory will be well equipped. But the drawback is it may happen because the senior faculties are mostly having a lot of other responsibilities, so they may not be able to devote that much time to you. So this is like one trade-off. Then again, going into more detail, what should be the criteria for selecting a supervisor? So I will say that finding a supervisor is more like finding a life partner, because you spend so much time together. So you can for sure say that if this selection goes wrong, that your life can be affected. So that's why I am saying that you should always put a lot more effort in finding a right supervisor. And one thing is for sure, you should talk to them before. So even with so even before joining, you should try to mail them. You should try to put an email. You should try to show your willingness to work with them. You should write to them asking about any opportunity if they are having. So let's say if they are having some project with them, so they can hire you for that project. So like these things will actually show your eagerness to work with them, and they may also become interested in working with you. So the crux is that you should talk to people working, or you should also talk to people working under them to know more about it. So these are all like different way to find more about your future supervisor. And I will say that that is the reason even for hiring as a research candidate, whether it is for MS or it is for PhD, we always rely on interviews, not just on some written exam, because through interview we also get to know what kind of personality you are having. So that is very important, because if we are going to work in a long term with you, it is very important that we should be knowing what kind of person you are, what is your working style. So that's why it is not just important for a supervisor, it is also important for you to find about your supervisor. So you should devote much more time there. Then I can also say that different supervisor have different expectations. So you can find, like, even within a same institute, same department, if let's say there are two professors, they may have completely different criterias for awarding you a PhD, because the professor in a institute is more like a individual leading a company. So every company has its own criteria. So same goes like there. So that's why again it becomes a very important thing to have a clear conversation about your future goals and about their expectation also. So I think this is all about what is research, how you should be, which coursework you should be choosing, and how you should opt for a supervisor. After this, I will just tell you somewhat more about my research domain. Like in IIT Delhi, I work in electrical department, and especially my research group is in the domain of circuit design. So my specialization lies in the area of data conversion. So data conversion is a field where you basically design converters, which essentially convert signal from one domain to another domain. So I think most of you are must be familiar with these terms like analog and digital. So these are like two classes of signal, and I work on designing the converters which convert analog signal either into digital signal, or a digital to analog converter which essentially converts digital signal into an analog signal. I will explain you why this is very important in present day scenario. That I will explain you in the next slide. The other topic in which I am working, that is related to power management. So power management is also very crucial area currently, because today you because today you see that lot of your processors, uh, is there some query, like I am getting some sound. Okay. So the another thing is related to power management. So power management is very crucial in today's scenario, because if you see nowadays processors which goes inside your computer, they have almost like billion transistors inside them. So the amount of power they are dissipating, that is huge. And also uh, the amount of power they require to run that chip, that is also substantially high. So it is very important if you somehow can trade this power like let's say if there is a way that when you don't need that much static power, you can somehow reduce the amount of current. So this all comes under the umbrella of power management, and this is known as on-chip power management circuitry. This is a completely research area in itself. The another thing which I work on is related to energy harvesting. So energy harvesting is a very new thing which has recently been explored. So it is more about, because nowadays you must have heard the terms like IoT, where you have a lot of sensors, and sometimes these sensors are like wirelessly distributed. So in those scenarios, if you want to power these sensors, you have to have some power source. That power source can be battery, but the problem with battery is like you have to replace them periodically. So that becomes a challenge. So another thing is, if somehow can you extract the energy from the ambient environment itself. So for example, ambient environment may have RF energy, vibrations. So if somehow that energy can be converted into an electrical energy, and if that electrical energy can run your circuit, so that will become that is like a very nice thing, because in this scenario you need not to replace any power source, and this thing is known as energy harvesting. So I also work in designing interface circuitry for these energy harvesters. Now, little bit talking about why this ADC and DAC is very important. See, the analog signal, the term analog itself comes from analogous. So anything which is analogous to real world is analog. So whatever signal exists in real world, all those signals are actually analog signal. Whether I am speaking my voice or whatever you are visualizing that image, everything is analog, right? But the problem with analog signal is that they are very sensitive to noise. Why they are sensitive? Because analog signal can have any amplitude. So the moment noise comes, its amplitude changes, and the moment amplitude changes, now it is a different information. So that's why it is very susceptible to noise. While on the other hand, there is another class of signal which is known as digital signal. In digital signal, you don't have all the possible amplitude as a valid signal. Rather, you have a discrete levels. For example, let's say 0 volt or 1 volt. So either your signal can be 0 volt or it can be 1 volt. So here actually you can define a threshold, let's say in between them, which can be 0.5 volt. And now you say if your signal is below 0.5 volt, you will always classify it as 0. And if your signal is higher than 0.5, you will always classify it as 1. So because of this thing, you have actually here higher margin for noise. So even let's say your signal is 0.3, then you should be classifying it as 0. But let's say noise comes of 0.1 volt. So then instead of 0.3, it becomes 0.4. But still, because it is smaller than threshold, you will still declare it as 0 only. So you see here, you have sufficient margin available for the noise. And because of this reason, currently you will find that most of your computing or your processing, it actually happens in digital domain, right? So now the problem is your real world signal actually are in analog domain, but your computing have to happen in digital domain. So that's why you need an interface where you have to take these analog signal and have to convert them into a digital domain. So for that you need an analog to digital converter. And the see, ADC is existing in literature since long time, even 100 years before you can find ADC. But what is the area of research is, the area of research is how fast these ADC can be operated or how accurate these ADC can be operated. So for example, currently it is very, very difficult to find a ADC which can operate at, let's say, 1 gigahertz frequency, but can also provide you 12 bit of resolution. So this is the point of research. If you can design something like that, then it will be very beneficial for the industry, because now you see that your cellular phones or your mobiles, so now sometimes you find that when you are streaming a movie, sometimes it is bit slow. Why it is bit slow? Because the signal which is coming, the circuitry which is operating on this signal, that is not fast enough. So if you can make that circuitry fast enough, then without any problem, your movie can stream, even a very high resolution movie can stream without any problem. So that's where this research is very important. Then the outcome of our research, we essentially design silicon chips. Obviously, it is not a chips which you can eat. So this picture just shows you one of the micro diagram of our design chip. And actually, just to tell you the dimension of this black rectangular shown in this figure, this black rectangular is actually having a physical dimension of 300 micrometer by 300 micrometer. So from this you can consider like how tiny these chips are. And this chip, like this, even a small rectangle, it may have more than 10,000 transistor inside it, right? So these are just some specifications on the right hand side. Like this particular ADC, it actually operates at 6 gigasample per second, and the accuracy is 11 bit in a 60 megahertz signal bandwidth. And this we designed in 2016, and